Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Just doing a quick channel update this time, and we'll start with sci-fi fantasy news. The first thing that I want to talk about is it seems like Netflix is releasing an anime called Terminator Zero. And this is going to premiere on August 29th, and it looks pretty cool. I guess it's going to be the story of the robots taking over, happening before even the first Terminator. So that looks really fun. I'm going to check that one out. Also, it looks like there's a movie coming out called Lumina, and I really can't understand what it's about by watching the trailer. It looks super weird. It looks like it could be science fiction and horror. I don't know. It's coming out on July 12th in theaters. It's called Lumina. It looks very strange. Look up the trailer, see what you think. If you know anything about it, let me know in the comments. News on the Star Trek front. They just recently announced they've hired actress Holly Hunter to be in the new series Star Trek Academy, I think it's called. That's very cool. I know Holly Hunter most from Raising Arizona, which is an absolutely fantastic movie that I loved as a kid, and I watched recently, and it held up. Coen Brothers film. Really great, and Holly Hunter kills it in that, and that's exciting news that she'll be now in the Star Trek universe, so very cool. Of course, we won't be seeing that show for a while, but looks like it is moving forward, so that's very exciting. Now on to things that I watched this week. I found out that my good buddy has never seen The Wicker Man, so he stopped by and we watched my 4K copy of The Wicker Man. Absolutely beautiful metal slipcase version of this classic movie. I love this movie. And it was really interesting to watch somebody else react to it. As we were watching, I'd look over at my buddy and he would just have this kind of look on his face of complete confusion. And he said at one point before we'd gotten near the end, he said, "This movie's like a fever dream." And it is strange. I want to almost call it Kafka-esque at the beginning, where this person comes into this town believing he is normal and that he understands how society works, and at every turn he is just completely blown away by the weirdness of the people that he's dealing with, and that seemed a lot like The Castle to me, and it's a wonderful story. If you haven't seen it, you absolutely should see it. It's very weird, and I know it's not the first folk horror film, but I feel like it is the most popular of the early firsts in the folk horror genre. One of my absolute favorites. I enjoyed the rewatch very much. If you haven't seen it, this 4K is awesome. If you have seen it and don't have the 4K, this 4K is awesome. Great specials on there as well. So I got to see The Wicker Man. Also, Studio Ghibli's doing Ghibli Fest, where they're showing a bunch of their movies in movie theaters again. And my daughter and I went and saw Nausicaa of the Valley of Wind, which in my opinion is my favorite Miyazaki films. One of the first that I saw. I think Kiki's was the first I ever saw. But Nausicaa has always been my favorite, and I really have to say, watching it again in the theater, it is more than an incredible anime movie. I think that it is an incredible sci-fi fantasy movie that should be up there with a ton of these other great sci-fi fantasy movies. I was shocked by how much it fits into the theme of a lot of the stuff that we've been reading. It reminded me the most of Shadow of the Torturer, and I know that's a huge thing to say. A lot of people are going to say there's no way Nausicaa is anywhere near the depth of Shadow of the Torturer, and that's true. It's a movie. It's not a huge book. It's not going to have anywhere near the depth, but just the concept of this being a far future Earth where people have to deal with the problems that the apocalypse brought about are really, really awesome. And the the way that the people in the earth are dealing with all of these is really incredible. Great movie. I really enjoyed it. The only thing that I noticed watching it now, as I'm a little bit older than the last time I saw it, is that Nausicaa seemed to me to be a bit of a Mary Sue character. She kind of did everything right and always had the right full wisdom answer. That slightly bothered me, but I was so taken with the world and the story that really didn't matter. Yeah, it was really worth it. If you have a chance to see this in theaters near you, go see it. I also watched the movie If. My daughter and I were both excited about this movie. It looked hilarious. It's interesting. It's a much deeper movie than I expected it to be. There was a lot of children that were very bored in the movie theater. I mean little children. And I wonder if that was a mistake in how they advertised it. This looks like a movie for 7-year-olds. And I think in the long run, it's more of a movie for 12, 13-year-olds. And I really enjoyed it. I think that, and this is way more Jason's area, but I think that this director has I think he wrote the script too. It's the guy that was in The Office, and that did the movie where you have to stay silent. Anyway, there are times in the movie where he creates stakes where there's important stuff going on, but then doesn't explain the meaning of the stakes. And I can't really say more than that without giving the plot away. But I can give a small example of this that isn't as good as the big one that gives the plot away. But her dad has had surgery, and she comes home and her grandma's like, "Oh my God, something's wrong with your dad. We got to get to the hospital." And you're like, "Oh no, 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 no." And it's super crazy. And then she gets to the hospital and the nurse is like, "Yeah, your dad had a pretty hard day, but he just needs to rest now." And you're left like, what was wrong with the dad? What's going on? Why did they freak out the grandma? And why did we freak out? And all this kind of stuff. He's interesting, really interesting storyteller in that way. So there was some problems with it, but I was highly entertained. I enjoyed it the whole time. It was really pretty. It really was. But if you are expecting to go see slapstick humor for 8-year-olds, that's not what this movie is at all. And a lot of kids were super disappointed in the theater that I was sitting in while I was watching it. All right. So that is what I watched this week. On to channel news. We're heading really close to 13K subscribers. Thank you to everyone that is subscribing and watching and commenting. We really appreciate you guys. We're having so much fun doing this, and we're glad that there are people that want to watch us do it as well. My favorite comment of the week comes from Paul Allison 6418. And he was commenting on the top 10 sci-fi reads. He said, "Great list. I can feel this list is coming from your heart and not from what is most popular. I do tire of the lists that only feature the popular titles." I really appreciate that comment, Paul Allison. And I wanted to speak to this comment for just a second to say that when my brother and I first started doing this channel, our goal was to just make videos about what we'd read or watched, so that maybe each other or family members could watch and chat about them. And then when a lot of people also seemed interested and we started getting subscribers really fast, we thought for a while about what the channel meant, if it was going to be a channel for strangers instead of family, which it definitely is. And one of the things that we had to decide right away is that we weren't going to try and do anything to keep getting the views, if that makes any sense. I know, for instance, some books don't do as well as others. When I read Koji Suzuki's The Ring, and we did a video on The Ring, that did not get very many views. I just did Earthsea last week, or this week, and that did not get very many views either. But that doesn't matter, because we decided early on, we just sat and talked about it. We both decided, you know what? This channel is going to be us reading and talking about what we want to read and talk about, and we're not going to try and do anything for the views. So I appreciate that you noticed that, and we plan to keep presenting that way in the future. So thank you very much for a really kind comment, Paul Allison. We appreciate it. On to what you can expect next week. Next week is going to be Roadside Picnic Week. Stalker Week. I read the book. My brother Jason watched Stalker. I did not watch the movie. He did not read the book. So we're going to present these completely separately as separate art forms. Even though they do have a lot in common, they also really are very different from each other. We have discussed the differences, but I don't plan on watching the movie because I want to talk about the book as just the book, and he wants to talk about the movie just as the movie. It is interesting to note that the Strugatsky brothers also wrote the script for the movie. So we'll have to keep that in mind when we do talk about both. I know this is a popular one. A lot of people really love this book, and I really enjoyed it. So you can expect a glowing review of that next week, plus a deep read where I go into my personal interpretations of the book itself. All right, thank you so much for watching this to the end. If you liked it, please click like. If you like this kind of content, please click subscribe. We'll be making a lot more of it in the future. And have a wonderful day. Thank you.